I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And today we have Kenna with us from Haunted Savannah Paracon.
Hello.
Yes. So Kenna's here to not only talk about the Paracon that is coming up this weekend. It's going to be Friday and Saturday of this week, correct?
Yep. September 15th and 16th.
Yep. So we are going to talk a little bit about that, but we're also going to do a My Favorite Ghost Story, which is always a fan favorite. Yes. We love the Parajunkie, or the Parajunkies love the My Favorite Ghost Stories. So we try to make them as much as we can. So we'll definitely get into some of your really interesting stories that I know you've already mentioned. But before we do that, I do want to say thank you to all the new Parajunkies that we have. We've gotten a ton of y'all recently, so this is really exciting. But if you are on the fence of becoming a Parajunkie, definitely consider doing so. You get everything ad-free. You get it like way before everybody else. You get private live streams. We are constantly talking to the Parajunkies on Patreon, so you get to see a little bit in our daily life as well. But yes, we take you along on ghost hunts.
We do. All manner of interesting things, all ad-free.
All ad-free. There's Parajunkie exclusive merch. There's all sorts of good stuff. So definitely consider becoming a Parajunkie over on Patreon. And we also now have a yearly subscription option, which is super exciting. Patreon just added that, actually. And so it saves you a little bit of money because...
Just set it and forget it.
Exactly. We just got our first yearly subscriber right when the new feature got added. So that was super exciting. But yeah, if that floats your boat, it's an option now. But yes. Anywho, let's go ahead and dive right on into my favorite ghost story, but also... Kenna, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Paracon and like what our listeners, if they want to come to it, would expect from the weekend?
Let's see, where do we even start? So start off with Saturday, the Paracon. We have some really cool special guests that I've been following for a while and love watching on TV. If you like shows like Ghost Hunters, Alien Highway, Expedition Bigfoot, they're really cool guests, really cool stories that they're going to be sharing. So Saturday, September 16th, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., you can see Chip Coffey. He's an amazing, let me tell y'all what, he's going to be doing a 2-hour psychic medium gallery reading here at the Paracon. Awesome. If you are skeptical, like I ask any skeptic, if you're skeptical or if you have been wanting to connect, don't miss this. I have left crying 3 different times from watching his gallery readings. He is absolutely phenomenal. And then we have guest Katrina Weidman. She's a huge one. I was so excited when she said yes to the Paracon. She's one of the OGs from Paranormal State. She's been on Portals to Hell with Jack Osborne. She's, what am I forgetting? Paranormal Lockdown. And now she's doing her own on YouTube, which is Travel the Dead. She's phenomenal, and I've got her dynamic duo sidekick, Heather Taddy. Mm-hmm. She's on a handful of shows: Alien Highway, Paranormal State, Portals to Hell, Mysteries Decoded. I think I might be leaving one off. Let's see. I just hung out with her this past weekend. She is so much fun.
She's super sweet.
Yes, yeah. She's a blast, and she has the best clothing. Like, I went home and decided I'm going to change my entire wardrobe because of how cute she looked. I was like, that is fashion, my friends. And then we have Sherry DeBenedetti. She is from Ghost Hunters and Ghost Nation. She's doing, so along with the Paracon, I also have events like add-ons, so you can do different stuff with the special guests. So Sherry DeBenedetti is going to be doing the trolley ghost tour with us. And that's Friday night. Gray Face, I'm just skipping around all over the place, but we're going to be doing Friday night. We'll have a VIP mixer. Let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Okay. Friday night, we're going to have a mixer at the Nest on River Street, and that's going to be all the special guests will be there. And then that will be 4:30 to 6:30, and that's a new restaurant. It's really cute. I love the setup. So after that, then we'll be doing our trolley tour with Sherry. And then after that, we're going to be taking over the Gray Face Oddities Museum, which hopefully y'all have been to.
Oh, yeah,
we did an investigation.
Yes.
It's great.
Oh my gosh.
It's intense.
I love that place. I know. So much Kool-Aid in there. I'm excited about that. So that's, I think, 9 to 11:30. So Katrina Weidman. Oh, I forgot one of my special guests. How could I? Also, Russell Accord from Expedition Bigfoot. He is like a G.I. Joe in real life. When you meet him, he is like the perfect Silver Fox G.I. Joe guy, and he has the best stories. So, and I have a really good story for him about a Yeti wolf I saw. I call it the Yeti wolf. I don't know what it's called.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we have a discussion we need to have. But he'll be there at Gray Face also. So we'll do an hour tour with in-house in the museum, and then we'll break away and do our own like investigation for like an hour and a half. Then we'll rest. And Saturday will be the big event. So then that's the Paracon. And during the Paracon, you can have lunch with the ladies of the paranormal, Katrina, Sherry, and Heather. And then afterwards is the Chip Coffee Gallery reading that I'm very enthusiastic about. And then that night we will be doing lots of equipment. We'll have Heather Taddy leading a paranormal investigation at the a Savannah haunting house, which
nice.
I am ecstatic about. So we have like a full weekend of fun stuff that you can join in on. And at the Paracon, we'll have 30 vendors, art, jewelry, ghost stuff, metaphysical stuff, equipment. I have a lot of really awesome vendors to check out. And then lectures will be throughout the day from your special guests. You can hop in and see. They'll be doing Q&As or sharing some of their personal stories. So there's really something for everybody.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we've discussed a lot of the different places that y'all are going. So if you are wanting to actually go visit, Mark's episode was like one of our very first episodes.
Yeah, he was our first guest.
Yeah, he was our first guest ever.
Second guest, one of them.
Oh, Eni was our first guest.
Eni was the first.
Yeah, Mark was the second, but regardless, we've had Mark back on to further discuss, his house and his various experiences.
I was actually called to that house during the filming. I'm actually in the movie. At the very tail end, they have all the people who were involved in the actual events of the house. And so, yeah, it's an incredible location, an incredible spot, and Mark has great stories about it.
So if you have been listening to those episodes and you want to see it in person, or if you watched, if you're a Parajunkie specifically, and you want to see the actual Gray Face Museum in person and investigate it, because we just scratched the surface of that place. Yeah, there is so much going on with it. So maybe you guys could uncover something that we did not cover. Yeah. So it's...
and they've installed an Ed Gein...
Yes.
House.
Yes.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's freaky. I'm actually, my voice is in it. I play the investigator that's interrogating Ed Gein, which is played by one of our friends, Chad.
Right.
And so it's a phenomenal little exhibit. So yeah, if you like true crime, that's also something to I guess pique your interest in going if you aren't already interested because of all the paranormal stuff. But yeah, I can only imagine it's going to be just such a great weekend. And so I could definitely see all of our listeners having a great time with it. And
how many events of this nature do you
So this should be my 4th year doing the Haunted Savannah Paracon, but we had a pandemic.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, yeah. So this is my 2nd year. I wasn't even into the paranormal until like later on in life. I grew up, Chucky. Chucky ruined my life. Like, I say it kiddingly now, but Chucky, at 5 years old, I got invited to go watch Child's Play, and you think you're going to watch some dinosaurs or something.
Right.
And watch this doll, like, chopping someone's ankle off and then getting melted in a thing.
Yep.
Incinerator. And I had to go to therapy for 3 years because of, seriously. I would always have the recurring nightmare. Oops, sorry. I would always have a recurring nightmares that he was watching me and through this picture frame. It was awful. So now that I'm, like, into the paranormal, now that I'm planning events, it's kind of comical, but I ended up in Savannah, so I live closer to Atlanta. I'm from Alabama. Should I just go to the part where how I got into the?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll shift gears into my favorite ghost story.
I got
portion of this
stories.
because it's obviously a part of this journey to becoming, the head of this Paracon.
Right.
So tell us.
Yeah. I know. I just jumped ship. Sorry.
That's quite all right. Let's go.
Here we are. Yeah. Okay. So Chucky ruined Kenna's life growing up, and I hated all scary things like the Tales from the Crypt skeleton. Ugh.
Oh, I love
He was the worst. They're cool now, but like growing up. So my husband ended up stepping on a bomb the day before our 1-year wedding anniversary. Oh, no. We ended up living at Walter Reed Hospital for 4 years, 61 surgeries. And while we were there, it was nuts. It's fun to look back now and be like, wow, we made it. So now we're at the good part. Now he's a physicist because of all this.
It's amazing.
Like, yeah, I know. Like, I look back and I'm like, had he not gotten blown up, essentially, we wouldn't be where we are. It kind of led us down this crazy path that includes the paranormal. So while at Walter Reed, we were spending a lot of time in a tiny little hospital. We were getting on each other's nerves, and he's like, you need to get out and get a hobby. And literally that same day, there was an audition for a show called the RIP Files. And So I ended up on the show with almost zero experience, but it leads me back to Savannah, Georgia. So after Eric got injured in 2012, my husband, 2013, his brother was getting married and they were moving to Savannah. So they wanted to not moving to Savannah, getting married in Savannah. So we were planning the wedding. So I was like, I heard Miley Cyrus shared this story about when she filmed the last song. She stayed in this haunted bed and breakfast called the 1790 Inn. And there's a ghost named Anna, and you should stay in this room. So I hyped myself up and I rented this room because we were going to be brave Ghostbusters. I have never been so scared in my entire life. I literally had SpongeBob on all night. I had to keep the blanket around my head because Boogeyman can't get you if you're under the blanket. I scared the mess out of myself. And this was like 1:30 in the morning, and my sister-in-law, Amanda's like, if anything wakes you up and you wake me up, I'm going to kick your butt. So the whole night, I've already talked to Anna. I was like, Anna, I thought this was a good idea to come here, but I'm scared to death now. You don't mess with me. I won't mess with you. I left the lights on. I turned SpongeBob on, not even kidding, because by the time I got there, I was like, oh my God, what if you do see a woman standing at your bed? What if you do? I started hyping myself up because the stories of Anna where women would wake up feeling like pressure on their neck or choked, and they're like, just don't sleep on Anna's side of the bed. It's the right side. So I get there and I have this plan, I'm going to make Amanda sleep on the right side, on Anna's side, and I'm going to see what she does to her. But then when you get there, there's journals beside the bed, and it's like, oh, the haunted armoire with the Ouija board opens up by itself, and it's on the left side. And I'm like, oh, wait, is the right side if you're looking at the bed or if you're laying in the bed? And then I started freaking myself out. So we're going to bed, and I'm by the bathroom, and that ends up being Anna's side of the bed. So I was like, oh man, this is not where I wanted to be. So I sat up most of the night. When I finally fell asleep, no kidding, the bed shook like a bull ran into the end of it. And I sat up and I was like, this cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. And I lean over and I look at Amanda, and she is snoring. And I'm like, oh, dear Heavenly Father. I was so nervous. I have the covers over my head. I'm praying. Nothing happened to me. Nothing happened. It happens again. It happens a second time where the bed just shook so hard. Finally, I fall asleep. I'm like telling myself I'm crazy. I'm making this up. At 5:30 in the morning, she and I both, like, I don't know what it was. Something woke us up, and we both sat up in the bed covered in sweat. I look at the air. It's like 68 degrees. And 5:30 in the morning, we leave. I'm ready to go. We survived. But that kind of, like, piqued my interest, even though Chucky's ruined my life and I'm scared. I'm like, okay, wait, hold up. So this kind of, I shared that story, and I shared, like, I'm one to step on a stick and scream. I like scare myself more than I think spirits and ghosts do. So I just was like sharing that. And then literally the day I thought about the audition, I was like, I didn't want to be on that show anyways. And they contacted me and they were like, so, we see that you're fun and whatever. So I ended up on like did see, and Southern Belle was the words they used, but fun and energetic is what they meant.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's a common slip of the tongue.
Right. Yes, y'all. So I'm like totally Scooby-Doo. Like you have to lure cupcakes over my head to get me going to the dark places. But it was such an adventure. So I ended up on the RIP Files. I watch the shows now and I'm like embarrassed. I embarrassingly laugh at myself because I absolutely was like a brand new paranormal investigator. There's some times where I was so scared, I would have like a K2 or something leading me to a curtain, and I'd stand at the curtain. I was like, I can't open it. They're thinking there's going to be like a clown or something on the other side. There's an episode where I'm literally like frozen at the curtain, and now I watch and I'm like, can I open the curtain? But I would not open it there. So that I ended up like traveling the Northeast, a lot of the Civil War states, and then I ended up I would always go in. We have psychic mediums, people that feel stuff. And I'd always be the one that's like, I feel like I want some macaroni. I'm always talking about food. And then I had like this crazy mediumship experience where I was like standing face to face with this guy in this gray woolly coat and gold buttons. Nobody else saw him. And come to find out, I'm like talking about this guy's old money. He's an aristocrat, like, my dad's a politician and he throws parties back in the 1800s. Our little episode comes out and they're talking about Lieutenant Wolf, who I'd walked around talking about a lot. And they show this basic picture, this stock picture off the internet. And it's a guy in a gray woolly coat with big gold buttons, the exact same jacket. And I called the producer and I'm like, where'd you get this picture? And she's like, oh, that's the original Confederate soldier uniform. Yeah. And I'm like, what? Like, I'd already talked to myself that I made this guy up. I was crazy. Like, and then when I saw that picture, I was like, there is so much. The validation was the rabbit hole for me. And then I got into energy healing and Reiki and studying spirits more and studying Savannah. So since that moment, I've been coming as much as I can, come to Savannah, research, find I've barely scratched the surface, and I've been doing this for 10 years now. There's always something new, history on top of history. There's always something new to find. So Savannah, why not Savannah? Like, it became easily my favorite place in the entire, I've probably been to 50 locations, maybe not that many, 30, 40, something like that. And Savannah is still like, when it comes to the paranormal, I feel like I can't. I mean, I'm sure you could find better. I haven't. So.
It's a very diplomatic way of putting it, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's, I think it's the sheer amount of spirits that we have here. It's like you can't not feel it. And I feel like even the most like spiritually not open, or I don't know what the word would be, but like you're just not as receptive to it. They even feel that energy when you just come into the historic district. It's you can't have that many spirits and not feel something. Sure. So it makes sense, and we're happy that you're here because I don't know why Savannah didn't have a Paracon beforehand.
So they used to have Ghost Con here ages ago, like in the aughts. They had Paranormal Weekend. I want to say the Ghost Hunters came down a couple of times, but it kind of dried up because there's a pulse to any interest.
Yeah.
It's strike while the iron's hot, and then it cools off a little, and then it comes back. And I think that you were getting into it on a new rise.
Yeah.
Like the Ghost Adventurers craze, and during that kind of second wave, because in the aughts you had just the Taps crew.
Before history is written, it's played. Before it's frozen in time, it's fought one shift at a time. Before it's etched in silver, it's carved in ice. What happens next will last forever. The Stanley Cup Final on ABC and ESPN Plus begins Saturday.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Bringing this big wave of interest into the paranormal.
Rumor has it they might be coming back soon.
I've heard such rumors. I have indeed. But that makes for this interesting thing where it's like, you can almost see the comings and goings of interest in the field. But I'd like to point out that those childhood fears oftentimes link us to these adult fascinations. The things that really scarred us when we were young, the things that really scared us when we were young, they become like this interesting sort of background noise for what we're willing to explore. Right. Because it was like, that thing scared me so much, or I was so afraid. Fear is a very powerful character builder. It gives you this very specific thing, because I'm highly phobic. I'm very scared of just about everything. So that gives you that kind of notion of, and it's a type of hypervigilance. Like when you're sitting in a room and something makes the smallest little noise in the corner, and you're like, did you hear that?
That's me.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, there's something over there. It's like, well, I think you're just attuned. You're just, you're so receptive, mostly because you don't want it to be there. Mostly because you're like, I'm protecting myself. And I think that spirits realize how attuned you become, how very aware of everything around you. But moving on to, because we kind of glossed over.
I know. Sorry. I just jumped through the
no, it's quite all right. It was exactly what we wanted to know. But you were saying that while your husband was in Walter Reed, you kind of began your journey towards the paranormal and the supernatural, but that he turned to physics.
Yes.
From
this has been the craziest journey. He went from he was in 5th group special forces, gets injured, and then he does he did a little modeling, he did a little acting, and then we landed in Atlanta because he was an actor for a while. He did Walking Dead and a couple other things, got a couple of roles, but he circles back. So the day he stepped on a bomb, he said time stopped. He was able to watch rocks and pebbles and stuff float around his head, and he was able to be like, this is a bomb. I've stepped on an IED. Please be alive. Please be alive. And that time dilation has led him down the craziest rabbit hole, and the stuff that he is studying now is I've never seen anything like it. I'm like, him and Einstein would have been good friends. I think he surpassed Einstein now, and I say that kiddingly, but not kiddingly. Right. It's it's prodigy now of this.
Einstein was definitely a pioneer of the thought, so your husband definitely has all of that information plus the new, plus what's going on in his head. And time dilation is a common occurrence for people who've had traumatic events. You hear this with car crashes all the time. You hear this with people who've been shot. And what it leads to is that perception dictates what reality is, to include time, because time is just a measure of perception. And that's where physics comes in. And I find that endlessly fascinating. We actually talk about it every now and then on this podcast. Is we are just scratching the surface of the idea that perception equals reality.
Right.
And if an event can dilate the force that we feel is, absolutely irreconcilable, you cannot do anything about time. It's like, maybe you can.
Yeah, and that's literally what he's studying. And it's like he's spent the whole summer researching. He has a little makeshift research lab. That's how you roll when you're an undergrad student. But
exactly.
Yeah, he's out there with our one of our white tables, and he's got he's like measuring things from the sun and shadows and weird different stuff. But
there's an amazing crossover between the paranormal and physics.
Man, he took I was so excited about this in college. He took a metaphysical class, and I'm like, we're going to bridge it. It's going to be us. And he's like, it was just the God theory. It wasn't even like all the exciting entanglement and Schrodinger's cat. We didn't dive. He didn't dive where I wanted to. So he's still working on it.
You're standing on the threshold.
Yes.
Is what it all comes to, because it all becomes theoretical past that point. But it's fascinating that's where you end up in this realm of here's what we didn't understand for so long, and what we don't understand we tend to turn into fears. What we don't understand we tend to mark in the unknown category, and therefore it propagates ghost stories, it propagates monsters, it propagates all these things. And it's like, well, what if they're all linked to this one notion that we're very susceptible to perception?
Well, and if you break it all down to its simplest form, I mean, it truly is energy. Energy doesn't. That's like one of the laws of physics is energy cannot be made or destroyed. So it makes sense that there's such a crossover between the paranormal and physics, because it's like, well, of course, the energy has to go somewhere. It doesn't destroy. So
that's my theory also on, when we're talking about a lot of negative, when people have negative things happen to them, I think sometimes it can just be leftover energy, good or bad, negative, or positive. It's all somewhere. One of the people on the RIP file, she had a crazy experience where things started happening in her house out of nowhere. They would start having doors opening and closing. She would hear people pulling up like on their gravel thing, and you'd go open the door and no one was there. There would be like wood thrown around in their basement. You'd hear it go down there and wood's thrown. But this all started, they couldn't figure out why it started, but it was escalating. And she said one night her bed was just shaking crazy. She was seeing lights everywhere. And she said she was so freaked out that they had a meeting, her and her roommate. What has changed? And she's like, the only thing that's changed is I've purchased a chair from an antiques shop. So they go to digging. First, they take the chair out of the house and everything stops. Yep. But they go to digging. They discover this chair is from a concentration camp in the Holocaust.
What?
Actual legit from Austria, from somewhere over there. And they connected it back to that. And
oh my God.
And the antique shop just didn't care to mention any of that.
Right. Right. We've been trying to sell this chair for a long time now.
I wonder why.
Well, I recently told a story about an antique shop by that. I've heard that story many times, where some item was brought into the household and everything just went off kilter. And you're like, oh, so, items can carry with it all kinds of bad juju. Certainly anything from a concentration camp would have a lot of negative energy just naturally associated with it. So
there's horrible energy from all facets. It's like, oh God. Well, did the antique shop know? Do you know?
I didn't get the rest of the story. I just know they did something with the chair, and it stopped the activity in the house. They probably put it in the house next door, and they've been haunted ever since.
Put it in the abandoned house and just leave it there. Don't even worry about the chair anymore. Right.
Give it a proper burial.
Yeah. Photo of the chair? I have never seen said chair. I should look into that. I know. That's a good question.
I would say JT's thinking, he's like, I'll take the chair.
Yeah.
It's
we don't want the chair. we don't want the chair.
Yeah, we have curated, as you can see, lots of little haunted
bric-a-bracs.
Haunted so
thingies.
Fun.
Yeah. The this portrait we were just telling Chris's wife Megan about, because when we went to Washington, Georgia, they gave us this. And we're like, yeah, nobody wanted it. It was somebody's relative.
It's a family member.
It's a family member, and they didn't want it.
They're like, no, thank you.
And I asked them, I was like, why is there a scratch through her eye? And they're like, oh, the cat did that.
Yeah,
and
that
I'm
makes
like,
sense.
And I'm like,
That tracks.
The cat.
Okay.
It's like a perfect, like the cat put out one claw.
right?
And then the three scratches and she's not staring me down and creepy right now.
So they gave it to us, and they're like, "Here you go, you can have this now." And we're like, "Okay, you know." But yeah, haunted objects are a whole different beast because it's like you never know what's attached to it. You never know what the story was with it truly. Because I mean, you can get hearsay of like, "Oh, this is the story I heard about this object," but it's like, is that exactly all the details?
Right.
Or, but super fascinating though.
So what is the process of starting a paranormal convention?
That's a great question.
How did you how do you go from interest to running an event like this?
So I went to a couple of events and I saw that they're having people that they enjoy watching on TV with like good conversations and good people and adding events. And I was like you said, I didn't see that happening in Savannah. And I'm like, why? Why is that not? Like Savannah is where I want these people to come and to, like, if you're going to see somewhere haunted, please, friends, come here. And so it kind of started as a dream. And then it took several years of planning. And then once we planned, then the pandemic. So, I mean, it's been a lot of roller coasters. So I think if you have a dream, you just start somewhere.
Yeah.
So I started little and like I said, I hope next year's even bigger. And then the next year, I hope it becomes like a huge thing for Savannah.
Well, Savannah itself is such a lightning rod for people who are interested in the paranormal, not to mention just paranormal activity, but actual, people come here in ghost tourism by the drove. So I see this as a great opportunity. It should be. So if you're out there, participate with the Paracon.
Well, and it's just like, if you're not in Atlanta, it's kind of dry in this region of paranormal conventions. We don't typically get a lot of stuff. You have to go out to source it and stuff. Although we have all the hauntings and whatnot,
right.
It's just you don't always get the opportunity to meet like-minded individuals as well, which is super fun. And a lot of our listeners live in Savannah too, which I think would be really awesome for them to be able to meet, some of the other people who are coming in.
Chip Coffey is a bona fide superstar. He's a rock star of the paranormal entertainment complex because, everybody who has a casual knowledge of paranormal shows should know Chip Coffey. He shows up everywhere and he's bona fide just amazing. So I'm very excited that he's coming to your convention.
Yeah, he just announced 2 days ago that he's now on Jack Osbourne's new show, Night of Terror, with
nice.
Sharon and Kelly Osbourne. But yeah, he's also one of the OGs. He has a show, Psychic Kids, which is amazing. It is so cool. A lot of kids grow up, either they don't have parents that understand or support it, or they just grow up not talking about it. They're seeing stuff
or they don't even realize.
Right.
That's one of the things is a lot of people have no concept of what it must be like to have that kind of invasive gift where actually Madison has this kind of gift where having insight to something that no one else can see or feel or it's like
can make you feel crazy.
Most kids, just shut down
does.
the conversation because they don't want to be persecuted or called out for being crazy. And that's kind of the whole thing about being a paranormal enthusiast anyway, is you tend to wait until you have a door open before you talk about it because you're like, well, you got to judge. I don't want to talk, about anything that would bring that kind of judgment my way.
Right. Well, I love the show Psychic Kids.
Yeah,
for
it's a
that
great show.
Very reason. It's very common for children to have these really wonderful psychic abilities or things like that, but they're smothered out of them.
Or it's suppressed.
Yes, suppressed because it's, people love to say, you know, children have active imaginations. I was very lucky that I had very supportive people around me, but I even still did not explain to anyone outside of my very close nuclear family what my abilities were, because I was like, yeah, that's a great way to get bullied.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's like, if you don't have the support system, it really does, you know, suppress those abilities, and later in life they might not even show up.
Right. I used to always liken it to a radio. Like, we all have radios,
Right.
And you can go up and down the dial and perceive all these different stations, all these different realities. But there is a reality that everyone agreed to. we're all on, you know, the
Right.
95.5 is the reality station. And if you leave that station, people will think you're crazy. They can't relate to you. You're listening to different music than everybody else. You're hearing
Exactly.
different things, seeing different things. So you're told when you're young, that's not real. That's not true. Bring it back to 95.5. Don't let it go. But some people maintain the ability to go up and down the dial, and some people get hit. They get into a traumatic event. They have cataclysmic, you know, occurrence in their life, and it nudges them out of that. So they're at 95.7. They still hear 95.5, but they have something extra. And you hear this a lot where people have near-death experiences, and then post that, they have an awareness. And I think that that's kind of what happens, is a lot of kids are just told to lock it down. You know, just lock it down on this, or people will think you're crazy, or,
Yeah.
or people will, you know, never relate to you. So don't let people do that. Go
let
up and
people
down the
do
dial.
Well, and I think that's why it's important to have, you know, a supportive community where, you know, like, which we try to foster with this podcast as well, like with the Ghost Mail segment. It's, you know, allowing people to share their experiences without the fear of judgment. No matter how outlandish the story is, it's like, who are we to say that did not happen? You know, because truly this whole field is very experience based. And so it's like everybody's perception of those experiences are unique, and the theories are equally as unique. So, you know, it's nice to foster an environment where people can explore the theory of, like, well, it could be this, it could be that, you know, in a supportive tone, and less of like a judgmental, harsh, like,
Which is what
Yeah.
what we've like grown up. Most of us grew up like you're saying. So yeah, I love it. I love that we can be open with it and be like, hey, I did see something. I did feel something.
Right.
And people be able to share their similarities. I think we all have our different experiences, but like you said, those weird experiences. I mean, I have seen some stuff that I don't even share to most people, because I'm like, I am not about to tell you that I just saw that, because I know you're not going to believe me.
right.
Right. There's a lot of self-monitoring where you're like, well, I have to choose my allies in this. Because another thing is, you don't necessarily want to introduce people who are either not ready or unwilling to go on that journey with you to something that would be out of their depths.
True.
You know, you don't want to do any damage with your stories. You kind of like, oh, you know, I don't think you're prepared for
Right.
for this. That may not work in your realm. And so yeah, it does. We the way our fans became Parajunkies was I mentioned that ghosts are like heroin. You get this one experience
Yes.
that really just
Yes.
makes you addicted, and you're like, I'm chasing that. You know, I'm going to try to get that sensation again. And it's fascinating to hear people's like inciting paranormal experience. You know, the thing that they did, and they're like, I'm getting to the bottom of it. I'm not just going to let this lie down, because it becomes such a passion. You know, you suddenly you are obsessed with it. And sometimes you don't want to do that to a person. Sometimes you don't want them to become obsessed with that, because you're like, oh, you seem very happy in your life.
You seem very happy.
I don't know if I want to push you down the road towards, you know, towards this.
Although some people I find are so afraid of the paranormal that they get addicted as well, because they're like, I want to know everything about this so that I can avoid it.
Right.
It's, you know,
Yeah, right.
so like, I know you're slightly on that realm, but it's we've had listeners that are like, I am horrified of ghosts. I don't like them, but I'm obsessed with paranormal stuff because I just want to know how to avoid them at all costs. And I'm just like, that's a very fair realm as well. That's not all of us are in the same path. As a lot of us are on the side of like, please, I'm so desperate to have that experience. But, it's interesting how vast it can be. The ghost heroin can be.
Yeah, it's true.
They really ran with the ghost heroin thing. Yeah. So, but so other than, the experiences that you had with, Anna's room and all that, is there any other paranormal experiences that you've had that just like one that you'll never forget?
I have several that I'll get y'all's input on this one because this one's still, I don't know. I was listening to y'all's thoughts on doppelgangers. So I'm like, is this a doppelganger? Is this a time loop? Is this, I had such a bizarre experience. Wait, do y'all just want Savannah or just the craziest?
Oh, no. You
okay,
personally.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is one of the weird ones. Belvoir Winery. It is in Kansas, near Liberty, Kansas. I'm not positive, but it is so creepy. There's so many weird things. And this is the first time that I feel like from listening to people's description of them that this is definitely a creeper. This wasn't the weirdest part of the night, but so the Belvoir Winery is like 4 buildings. Only one is running. It's a winery. And the other 3 buildings are like dilapidated. There's like ceiling on the ground, water on the floor. There's been like rituals and homeless people, and you just shouldn't really be in there. So that's where I am. And And a friend and I were walking, and we're walking past this staircase, and this is like the mild part of this. This was the most normal part to me. But there was a black creature on all 4 legs, and it's crawling like its neck is like click, 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 and its wrist, it wasn't clicking, but to me it was like, its wrists were like doing this, and it was on all 4s running towards us. And I was like, that's got to be a creeper. I've never seen it, but I've heard people say that. So I'm already freaked out, and I'm trying to like get out of this building. But then we're probably like 10, 15 feet. And you're supposed to get permission to walk around, and maybe I just kind of went into the building because the guy was really busy at the bar. So I'm just like the guy that runs it. He had a lot of people in there. So we were just sticking our head looking around. So we're about 15 feet from walking back out of the door, and he walks up to the door, and he has his bald head and his purple plaid shirt on that we saw earlier in the bar. He walks up to the door and shines his flashlight in our face. And we're like, oh, crap, busted. Me and my friend both say explicits at the same time because she's like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. And I'm like, it's cool. I'm going to talk to him. We'll just say, hey, we're peeking our head in. They really didn't care, but just wanted to cover our ground. So, and in front of this place is just open. There's like half a football field away is the other building you have to run back to. I walk out this door, and there is no man. There is nothing. He's not there. And me and my friend are like, what? She's panicking because she doesn't want to, she lives near there and she doesn't want to get in trouble. So I run into the building. I'm like, hey, this doesn't make sense. I take off like full sprint to try to catch this guy. He must have ran really fast to get away. So I run back in the building, and I go to the middle, where the bar is. And it's in the middle of this big building. And there he is behind the bar serving 20 drinks to people. And I'm like, excuse me, sir, were you just in front of the morgue, like shining your flashlight? And he's like, no, I've been in here. And I'm like, no, you were. And he's like, that might have been Frank, the security guard. And I was like, does he have your ball head and your purple plaid shirt? And he's like, no. And he like looks at his watch, and he's like, he'll be here at 7 actually. And so I don't know if that was a time loop. I don't know, like the light went into my eyeballs. We saw it perfectly. Me and my friend were both like, what the? Oh, no. So I know that was validated. But the creeper, that thing, I don't know. That was a very, very, I'm still scratching my head about that. I don't know. Is that a time loop? Is it a doppelganger? Is it a trickster? Am I crazy?
All
of the above.
Right.
One of my instinctual answers is at some point in the future from that moment, he hears a noise out there. He goes, he checks it out, and he fleetingly sees two women in his building as a time loop situation. Because that's pretty classic right there. Is you see somebody in a place and they do not see you, but then later he may have very well encountered something that he couldn't explain.
That's so weird.
Just for a split second, he saw somebody there, and then he's like, "Oh," but you may have just gotten a glimpse into the future. You might have just gotten a glimpse into him checking it out later that night, or at some other point in time. However, to have it so closely follow a creeper incident,
right,
brings about the question of what kind of warping of time space or what kind of warping of reality or what kind of warping effect from seeing something that definitive, because that's another thing is like if you see something, especially when they fall out of just simple category, when you're not dealing with, oh, well, that's, old Jim who used to work here and now he's dead. You're now dealing with some entity, something. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, how did it get there and what did it do to get there? And what resonates with it? Does it exist in a totally different, dimensional pattern than we do? And you just stepped into the wrong dimension for a second, and then you're playing catch up just to get out. That might be how people just vanish and disappear.
Right.
Is they step into the realm of these creatures. Because a lot of people think that cryptids could be more paranormally linked than just being these cryptozoological curiosities, animals that just seem out of place or undiscovered. They think, could it be slipping from some other realm of reality? And because that's what in my brain, it's like you encountered something and then you had what seems like a time loop or doppelganger experience, because the other one is a lot of entities, dark shadowy entities, can imitate people, in the classic sense. They take on the voice of your mother and talk to you, or they look like a family member and try to become welcoming, but you didn't have a welcoming experience so it's like that was not an inviting experience, having light shined in your eyes. It wasn't the classic trap. But
the fact that it shined light into my eyes,
and you had it so clearly,
is so mind-boggling to me.
Well, so I've actually had two different experiences with two different entities that sound very similar to what you experienced. I had an experience in one of the historic homes. I know they don't like me talking about it, but one of the historic homes in Savannah. If you know, you know already. But basically, I was working for a different tour company, and we had access to the house. And so I was in between tours, and I was just walking around the house, wandering like I always did. And there was this entity that we knew of that portrayed itself as both a little girl and a little boy. I was the only one who would say that I'm like, it's the same entity, because they're like, oh, there's a little boy and a little girl. And I'm like, no children died in this house, first off. There's no indication that they had any connection to this house in general. So I'm like, weird already. But I also always thought it was weird that you never saw the boy and the girl in the house at the same time. Well, we were... while I was in between these tours, I saw what looked like the little girl go into one of the parlors, the front parlor towards the front doors, and I decided to follow it. So I was like, let's see if maybe there is the little boy in here as well. And so I go to follow the little girl, and she's not in there. And I noticed something scurry under the couch. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And
that's weird.
And so I'm just curious, because I've seen spirits my whole life, so I'm not afraid of ghosts to my downfall, unfortunately. I would be the first to die in a horror movie, for sure. And so I go and I look under the couch, and what I see is this black entity, like the darkest shade of black you could imagine, standing on its fingertips like that. And it reminded me so much of the creeper entity that you were talking about, because it moved kind of like that, where it was like...
Yes, like it doesn't have...
Yeah.
Like it's hyper...
Mobile.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, okay. And so I've always chalked that up to being just a very low residual malevolent entity. Not residual, but low vibrational entity, because we call it the anglerfish, because it baits people with the little
Children.
girl.
The anglerfish is that big ugly fish with a little light on the end. So the light it shows you something that raises your curiosity or moves you in one direction or the other. But then there's this horrible jagged tooth thing at the other end. But
that's what we always referred to it as. And then the other experience was actually in this building. There is what we call the trickster spirit. One of our parajunkies, is a big fan of the trickster spirit, because she also is one of the drivers for our tour. And she and I were sitting on the trolley waiting for the guests to come out. And one of our actors, Bill, he's an older man. And so usually after his part, he would just leave early, so he'd get home and all that. And so it wasn't uncommon to see Bill come out way before any of the guests. So one night we were sitting and we see Bill come out the door and start heading towards the front of the building. And we waved to him. We're like, hey, Bill, you going home? And he completely ignored us and just kept walking, which, if you know Bill, which I know you do, he is not that type of person.
He does not pass up a conversation.
He does not pass up a conversation. So we're like, that's really weird. And then about 15 minutes go by, because we never saw Bill come back down. And we were like, maybe he's just like in the bathroom or something, whatever. We see Bill come out the front, the doors again. And we're like, wait, how did you get? And we're like, Bill, come here. And he comes walking up and he's like, hey, ladies, how's it going? And we're like, did you go down to the front of the building? He's like, no, I just got done with my part. I'm going home now, and we're like, that's so weird. And that is not the only experience we've had with that trickster, where it's portrayed itself as like actors during scenes. Like one of our actors almost quit because he had such an intense experience with that entity. So it sounds to me, because that seemed like pretty similar to what you had. I wouldn't call it a doppelganger for sure, but I would call it like a trickster. And I wonder if it wasn't the same entity. Almost.
Well, there is something interesting about that whole concept of the way it moves being so unnatural that it seemed like its joints were, because oftentimes it's regarded that when darker entities attempt to look like humans, they're getting it wrong. Like they have to work out the kinks of how the body moves, and it creates a momentary lapse. Like you can usually tell if you're dealing with something supernatural. And I guess, it's funny because we're now looking at all this AI art. So if you ever look at AI art, you'll oftentimes say, oh, there's too many fingers on that hand. Or, there's something weird about this image. They didn't get it quite right. It's hauntingly inaccurate. There's something there. And I think that's true of when you see a supernatural entity attempting to look human. There's something uncanny about its attempt, and movement is one of the big ones. If it's moving very strange, you're like, oh, you don't understand how muscles work.
No, this thing was so creepy.
Yeah. You're pretending to have a body, and it's giving you trouble. It's like, oh, wait, why? What's this? Why does this work this way?
Yes.
Well, Kenna, thank you so much for coming on today. And I'm sure when you're in town again for the Paracon, we'll have to meet up with you so we can talk some more. But we've really enjoyed hearing all your stories and things like that. And I'm so excited for the Paracon. I think it's going to be an amazing event, and I can't wait to see how it all unfolds. But thank you for making the trip out today.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all letting me do this. And y'all have a table. If y'all would like, y'all are welcome to be part of the Haunted Savannah Paracon with us this year.
So if you want to see us at the Paracon this year, come on down. We'll be at a table passing out wares and poking people in the eye.
Yeah, and
okay, we're not going to poke people in the eye. That costs extra.
Yes. Well, maybe we'll build you a throne, and you can be throned as the Ghost King, and you can come kiss Chris's rings.
Please don't.
Yeah, and I'll introduce y'all to the special guests. We'll see if we can't get them on.
Sure.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. We met Heather Taddy at the Paranormal Society's Paracon. Yeah. We loved her. She was so sweet, and so I'm excited. It's going to be great. So yeah, if you want to come meet all these fun guests and do investigations, you want to buy some spooky wares and investigate Mark's house,
Yeah.
definitely,
Absolutely.
definitely come on out. It's going to be a great time. So, but with that, y'all, thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. And my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.